Joining me now is Republican Congressman of Arkansas and a member of that Intel Committee, Rick Crawford. Congressman, good to see you. Do you believe the White House knew nothing about the raid before it happened?
Well, I'm not sure what to believe that comes out of the mouth of the press secretary, but I would say this: if the president didn't authorize it, we have real problems. If the president did authorize it, we have real problems.
Yeah,
so suffice it to say, either way, this is a problem.
Is the FBI being used as a political weapon? I mean, not only was he a competitor with President Biden, but Donald Trump still could be a competitor in 2024. I mean, it just looks bad, doesn't it?
It looks terrible. And what this is a continuation of what we saw in 2016, where we see the FBI being used as a political weapon against a presidential candidate. Now, look, President Trump has not declared that he's a candidate in 2024 yet. And that may be why they've done this, because this could be a preemptive strike. Keep in mind that my colleague, Elise Stefanik, had a language in the IAA a couple of years ago that was specifically written to prevent this kind of thing from happening. And it specified presidential candidates or other federal candidates for election. So we should have gone a little bit further and said former presidents. But we thought really we were doing the right thing in inserting that language into the Intelligence Authorization Act. But clearly the FBI didn't get the message. And I think this is where they sort of obey the letter of the law, but they clearly overstepped the spirit of the law. And what they did was really betray what they're all about, and that is to be an attack arm of the Democrat Party.
Well, Congressman, decades ago, we had something called the Church Committee. That was in the 1970s. I think it was 75. Senator Church had this committee to haul in a lot of FBI abuses that took place during the Nixon administration. We thought we straightened it out. Clearly, we didn't. As you mentioned, the history. The Washington Times, by the way, has a suggestion there should be a new church committee. They write an editorial saying we need a new church committee. The pattern of law breaking and indifference to political, social, legal, and governmental norms among the bureaucracies of the FBI and the Department of Justice has now become so obvious and so egregious that Congress must examine the activities of those charged with safeguarding the United States and her citizens. Now, you and I know Congress is not going to do that under current leadership, but in November that might change. You guys might take over, but that still leaves many months, about 6 or 7 months before you guys are in power, even if you win in November. What are you going to do until then?
Well, I think what we're probably going to see is we're going to go to Adam Schiff, who is the chairman of the committee that has the exclusive authority to conduct oversight over the intelligence community, of which the FBI is a member. So this clearly is within the purview of the Intelligence Committee to conduct that oversight. Will Adam Schiff go ahead and go along with an investigation? Odds are no.
Yeah, I was going to say the answer is very simple, Congressman. It is a big N-O.
Right. And so that means that what we're going to have to do in the new Congress is take that initiative on ourselves. We are prepared to do that, happy to do that. That's the responsibility of the intelligence community, the Intelligence Committee in the House.
Unfortunately, though, that's after a big election. And we've got the midterms. And a lot of this, as you suggest, may have been done to influence that election that's coming up in November. So are you saying there's virtually nothing Republicans can do between now and the time you might take over in January?
Well, I'm not sure that there's nothing we can do, but this is one of the consequences elections have, is that you put people like Adam Schiff in charge of a really important committee, and then he turns it into a political arm of the Democrat Party, and that's really a shame, and it does a disservice to the American people. But look, I mean, these are the consequences that the American people are now having to deal with, and so I think that it has absolutely shaken the faith of this institution, once vaunted institution, to its core. And so there has to be a really wholesale review of just what the FBI is all about. Now, and maybe, change the cultural aspects of the FBI.
If, in fact, Republicans win in November and you take over in January, who would you like to subpoena to get to the bottom of what happened here?
Well, where do we begin? I mean, certainly FBI Director Wray has to come in. Attorney General Merrick Garland has to come in. Both of those two are ultimately responsible for this. And then I think we go downstream from there. But quite frankly, I think anybody in the White House that has any kind of connection to the intelligence community with regard to these types of actions are fair game. But first and foremost, FBI Director Wray needs to be called on the carpet along with Merrick Garland and explain why they would engage in this. Look, this is a repeat of 2016. And look, they're trying to affect elections just like they did in 2016. They're trying to affect the outcome potentially of the 2022 elections and possibly the 2024 elections. So this has to stop.
Do you think that their activities could influence 2024? That is, could there be something that happens between now and January, or maybe even after, if Republicans don't win in the fall, that could legally prevent Donald Trump from running if he decides to?
So the stated goal of the January 6th committee was essentially to say, we want to make sure that Donald Trump is ineligible from holding any elected office in the future. That's been their goal. So now what we see is the FBI and the Department of Justice have pretty much taken them up on that mission and joined in and said, okay, we'll help you here. And they go and exercise this raid on his home in Florida. Keep in mind that anybody that steps out of line as far as the Democrats are concerned are fair game. Henry Cuellar had a similar raid on his home.
Democrat
He's
congressman.
A Democrat.
Yeah.
He's a Democrat congressman in South Texas, but because he doesn't toe the line for these liberals and all the woke that's going on, they go after him.
It's amazing.
Nobody is safe.
With this disregard for law and order, and this has to be the final question, are you concerned that there might be shenanigans with the elections? Are you concerned? I know you guys in Arkansas have new acts in your election code that tightens things up a bit, but are you worried that there may be shenanigans?
Well, I'm worried because in those states where there is a propensity for that kind of thing, but the good news is that our states are responsible for exercising elections. And I think the security is going to be higher and tighter than it was in 2020. But we really have to make sure that we exercise due diligence on this.
Congressman Crawford, good to see you, Congressman. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.